Hello, I'm Deborah Malone, founder of The Internationalist and host of Internationalist Marketing TV. Today's guest is Nick Baer, founder and CEO of Saxbys, a chain of coffee cafes with a mission to make life better. Nick, what a pleasure to see you. Welcome to the show. So delighted to be talking to you today.
The pleasure's mine. Thanks for having me, Deborah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, look, why don't we start at the beginning? Saxbys is doing a tremendous amount of innovative things, from being a certified B Corp. One of the things that I think is amazing, you're also paving the way for future business leaders with your student CEO program, which is known as the Saxbys Experiential Learning Platform. So why don't you just tell us about the origins of Saxbys?
Yeah, so this is Saxby's 17th year in business, which is sort of crazy to say out loud. It makes me feel slightly old, but I'm proud of every single one of those days, months, and years. Particularly because, like I think any entrepreneurial venture or anyone's entrepreneurial career, it's always about pivots and falling down, but hopefully falling forward. And so I think I'm particularly proud of the fact of the business that we've become and who we are today, in particular our experiential learning platform. So yeah, the origin I think goes way, way beyond though the actual creation of the business. So my parents were teenagers when they had me, which kept them from being able to get their education. So they had gone to college, started a family earlier than they expected and wanted, dropped out of school, and took pretty much whatever jobs that they could get, and it shortchanged their opportunity to do the things that they were actually passionate about. And so for 18 years growing up in their house, everything about work was stressful and uninspiring to them, and they really impressed upon me to get my education. Our higher education system is not perfect, but it is tried and true in opening up doors and giving people the skill sets they need to go pursue the things that they're passionate about. And so I heeded their advice, went to college, trying to figure out what my thing was going to be. And after a bunch of different internships and a lot of different experiences, there were a couple conversations that I was having when I was freaking out about what my first job was going to be. It was like spring of my senior year. It was like this time my senior year many years ago. And I had some coaches and teachers who were just so instrumental in my life. And I remember how calmly and confidently they were talking to me about how they chose that profession for the exact conversation that they were having. They knew my life was about to change by getting my college degree, and that was validation for them to take that career. And I remember thinking to myself that I'm like, I want people at the beginning, the middle, and the end of my career, whatever I do professionally, to feel like their lives were improved because I existed, the same way that my coaches and teachers did, right? I sort of like put that on a shelf. And then the second thing was I'd finally gotten exposure to business, right? Like I went and I essentially studied business in college, all these different internships. I was an athlete. And I think that like the best comes out of us when we're forced to be competitive, right? Like you can't sit in the corner and feel sorry for yourself or take it easy. So I really wanted to put together the feeling that like I wanted to be super competitive and driven in what I did, but I also wanted to be really happy and fulfilled in what I did. And making an impact in people's life is the greatest wealth anyone can have. And so I wanted those things to sort of be together. And so fast forwarding the story a little bit, I went into the work world. I was in consulting, and I liked it. I was around smart people. I was forced to be competitive, but I was not making that difference in people's lives. If I didn't show up on Tuesday, no one's business was going to fall apart. I wasn't impacting anybody's life. And finally, I realized, like, in order for me, A, to be happy and proud of what I was doing, and B, to impact people's lives, I felt like I needed to create something. And that something ultimately was a coffee company, right, that we call Saxbys today. But from the outset, our mission statement has been to make life better. We were going to create a business and we were going to operate our business in a manner with which the number one way we were going to evaluate ourselves was how many lives we made better. And sometimes it is as simple as give them amazing coffee. Sometimes it's as amazing as you're covered in rain, you ran through a storm to get to our coffee shop, this coffee's on me. And sometimes it's through employment and workforce development and all the things that we're really doing today. But that was really like the origin of Saxbys.
That's an extraordinary story, because sometimes, you mentioned so many things. You mentioned the need to be competitive and the need to be driven, and how that's important to business, but also how you want to balance that with with a sense of happiness and fulfillment, and also doing something for others. I mean, you seem to be so, you were so ahead of your time, in terms of that balance, because I think it's only now that the workplace is starting to see that, and I'm really thrilled that the workplace is changing, but it's also changing in some ways, due to this whole like revolution in entrepreneurial thinking. But let's talk a little bit more, just about now. We talked about your origins and what your goals were. Now tell us about the coffee shop. I'm curious because I don't fully know the whole story. Talk about how there was the association with universities.
Yeah, so sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, right? And so I was building this coffee business, and its original origins, the business was franchised. The idea was that if we were going to make life better for as many people as possible, we had to grow, right? So growth was always at the core of what we were going to do. And I was a poor recent college graduate who didn't have any sort of like financial means besides my credit card to try to be able to build the business. And so, there's that. And then there's also the fact that I think the best comes out of people when they get to be entrepreneurial, and I think that's one of the best things about franchising is that a company can create a brand and operating procedures, and people can come in and join that brand and be entrepreneurial. And obviously with franchising, franchisees are putting up most of the capital. So franchising made a lot of sense for us. We could grow and we could be entrepreneurial all under the umbrella of one business. And so we were growing for a bunch of years. The business relocated to Philadelphia for really our first investor. Philadelphia is really, it's a large city, but it's really just a big college town, right? There's 55 plus institutions of higher education in and around the city, right? So it's a huge college town. And so probably the midpoint of our business, they're called the 2012, 13, 14 region, higher ed started to really focus on and support entrepreneurship. Unlike when I was in school, if you wanted to learn entrepreneurship, hopefully mom, dad, next door neighbor, someone down the street was going to teach you entrepreneurship because higher ed was not going to do that. Well, it started to really change in that period. And so they were teaching the classroom portion of write a business plan, SWOT analysis, cash flow analysis, really well, but they were really starting to look for in the pedagogy of higher ed, they were looking for experiential learning. So they were trying to get entrepreneurs in the classroom so they could show and talk about the battle scars, not about like, oh my God, I'm the smartest, most successful person ever, but the opposite. Like, let me tell you about how hard it is and how one of, if not the most important skill you need to have is not intelligence, it's resilience. And so I was in the classroom a lot. And I was loving it. It was quintessentially like it was, we call one of our core values is actually to serve yourself by serving others. I was, I guess, theoretically serving others by sharing my experiences, but I was really serving myself. I was learning so much about entrepreneurship and that consumer base. And so I remember I became the first ever entrepreneur in residence at my alma mater, which is Cornell University in the middle of upstate New York. And so 3.5-hour drive from Philadelphia. So for 5 years, once a month, 5 years straight, I would literally drive from Center City, Philadelphia first thing in the morning, go up to Ithaca, do my thing, and come back down the same night, right? It was really intense, but I did it with a smile on my face because I was having a blast with it. But I remember thinking to myself that we're scaling a business. Our folks are very, very entrepreneurial. Our industry is rapidly growing, but I couldn't put my finger on how much we were making life better. We had some great employment opportunities with people that were incarcerated. We have people from coming out of homeless shelters. We were doing some good work, but it wasn't a bullseye, right? And so I saw this happening in higher ed, and I was like, you know what? Everyone's looking to teach entrepreneurially. They're looking for students to be able to learn in the classroom, open the door, and then take that theory and put it to practice. And I've been running these businesses long enough to realize that a bustling coffee shop, a $500,000, $750,000, $1 million coffee shop has every moving piece that happens in any business, big or small, profit, nonprofit, private, public, anything that happens in any business actually happens in a coffee shop. Hiring, firing, promoting, the whole HR spectrum, training, operations, supply chain, finance, everything happens in it. But young people particularly like these businesses. And so I had this hypothesis that running a coffee shop would be the best way to teach people business and leadership and entrepreneurship. And it could be a great idea in your head, but it has to be a great idea in other people's heads as well. And so I started to approach people in higher ed, particularly the president of Drexel University, John Fry here in Philadelphia, with this idea. John, what if we allow your students, engineering and architecture students, to design their own Saxbys, and then students from all academic disciplines the opportunity to be able to run their own Saxbys 24/7, 365, integrated in the classroom, and allow them the opportunity to take real responsibilities. I call it's a consequence-rich environment. And fortunately, he thought it was a good idea as well. On April 13th, 2015, the first ever experiential learning Saxbys was opened at 34th and Lancaster in the middle of Drexel's campus. And to say it was a success that first day and 7+ years later is an understatement. It's I think in many ways created a movement within Saxbys and within the experiential learning space.
That's just such an amazing story. It's so wonderful because there's so much conversation about making a difference, but it's the actions that matter, and not only the actions, but what might lead to my next question. What about some of the students who worked in the coffee shop? Do you have any success stories from them? And I must confess, I met two of your CEOs, student CEOs of some of the, and I was very impressed by not only their demeanor, but some of the things that they said quite honestly. Just about how, you can't just hire your friends, you got to fire them if they're not working up to what you need. And it's interesting, but do you have any examples of some people that went on to do other things or some still there? I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, I'll put some words and stories to this, but it won't do justice seeing them in action, right? Seeing these opportunities. So to put a little context to it, so you use the exact right term, Deborah. So these cafes, there are now about 25 of them on different colleges and universities, and so they are run by student CEOs who for 6 months take no classes. Their university gives them a full semester of academic credit. They have wages and bonuses tied to things like revenue, profitability, and the most important one, what we call team development, how many people you retain and promote in their positions. And they have full autonomy of their profit and loss statement. Now, these are not like tucked away in the 4th floor of an academic building that nobody goes into and they're using monopoly money. They're actually in the most desirable high traffic places in their college campuses, in the business schools, in the student unions, in the largest dorms. And as a result, these are tremendous businesses. On average, they do about $1 million a year in revenue. It's been told to me on a previous podcast that less than 2% of all American businesses do $1 million or more in revenue, right? So these are undergraduates that are running a top 2% business. And when it's that busy and run exclusively by students, the average student CEO is leading a team of 50 of their peers, right? So imagine being 20 years old. You have 50 people that report to you. You have a global supply chain with over 400 SKUs you have to keep track of in tight spaces, right? So you're turning your inventory every 4 days, and you are responsible for and present on a quarterly basis your profit and loss statement to the executive team of the company, right? So this is a tremendous, tremendous responsibility. I think maybe the most important part is not just how much responsibility it is that the skills that are honed in doing this are needed and agnostic of area of study or industry. And what I mean by that is this is not simply about understanding a P&L, but a P&L exists in every single business and every single industry. This is about honing and mastering power skills, emotional intelligence, critical thinking, cultural agility, resilience. You cannot learn resilience sitting in a classroom. You have to learn it in your feet in a real consequence-rich environment. And that's what these young people are doing. And so when we first met in Florida at that conference, I was joined on stage by Melody, who is the inaugural student CEO at Rowan University in South Jersey, and by Kimberly, who was a former student CEO of Bowie State University, our first historically Black college partner in Maryland. And so to sort of illustrate it through their experiences, Melody graduated this past year and had a plethora of job offers. And fortunately, we were really, really pushy about her accepting one in particular, which was to come join us corporately. And so Melody is one of our leadership developers. So our student CEOs, right? We're changing out our student CEOs every 6 months, are not getting trained by someone like me who knows very little about anything. They're getting trained by their peers. They're getting trained by people who did this and who understand what it's like to be a college student. I hardly remember what it's like to be a college student. They know it. So she's now one of the real glue and the developers of talent in our business. Kimberly really wanted to get her master's. She wants to be a psychologist. And so we wrote a letter of recommendation for her, and she got into her dream school, the University of Maryland, and she's going to be completing her master's in psychology in a semester from now. And so when you take a huge step back, we have 136 former student CEOs, and they are in every possible industry and area of study that you could imagine, right? Engineering, nursing, fine arts, and everything in between. And so some do change their major, right? I hear the stories all the time where like, Nick, I was actually at Westchester University last week, and our student CEO was like, I came into this experience as a dietitian major, but I'm changing into a business management major, right? Because she's like, I didn't know what that was. She knows what that is now, right? She's running a really, really busy business. And then we have other people who are like, I went in as a nursing major, and I really not only want to continue as a nurse, but I have so many more skills and confidence in myself as a result of this experience that I know I'm making the right decision. And so that's what I love so much about this, is it's not just for food and beverage people or hospitality people or even business people. These are the skills that the leaders of tomorrow need to be able to hone and just cannot simply be taught in the classroom.
No, you make such a great point, and I even remember some of the conversations where they would talk about, oh my goodness, the weather changed. Now, how do we market something? Maybe someone doesn't want coffee. Maybe let's get a promotion on iced coffee on social media. When the temperature goes up or something. And I think that you talk about agility and you talk about all the skills necessary. I mean, I think you're right. It is forming leaders of tomorrow, and I think that's so wonderful. Let me ask you something, and it's a particular interest of mine. I realize that your mission is make life better, and in many ways, I guess you can say that you're as much a social impact company as you are a coffee company. Um, there's a lot of conversations now about being purpose driven. And of course, what happens whenever you overuse a buzzword, regardless of the good it does, you also get things like purpose fatigue, and people are tired of purposeful messaging, and so on and so forth. I'd be curious about what purpose means to you. I know you've talked about it personally. What does it mean to
Yeah.
Saxbys?
Yeah. So, I mean, look, I think in the origin of this story is a bit selfish, right? In that I wanted to build a business and be able to pursue a career that I would be proud of, and that would be measured by more than just financial success. Like that's a necessary evil. Like if you're in business for profit or non, like revenue and cost management is of critical importance, but it's too simplistic for that to be the only measurement of success, because that rarely makes people happy. Like meet people who have a lot of money, they're not oftentimes much happier than people who don't have a lot of money, right? But having purpose in your life, like we're hearing all these stories right now. Like the key to longevity in life is how many personal and genuine relationships people have. It's not about how much money you have or the best healthcare that you have, but it's about connections to other human beings. Like that's what makes us happy and motivates us. And I saw that in myself when I was graduating college. And so I wanted that to be centered in what we did. And I had a hypothesis that it wasn't rare to me. It wasn't unique to me, that other people were going to be attracted to this mission, that we were going to make life better by operating a successful, efficient, productive business. And so that business has since attracted, almost 1,000 people who share the same mission every single day in our personal and our professional lives to make life better. And so I think that the key is, like, most good businesses have a mission statement and they have a core values, and they might even put it in their company handbook, right? Like you get hired and they're going to tell it to you that day. As I like to remind people in our business every single day, is that the good companies have them. The best companies not only make their decisions based on their mission core values, but it's at the center of what they do as a business, not what they talk about, but what they do. So if you think about Saxbys today, operating 25 experiential learning cafes with hundreds of college students running their own P&Ls, and I tell you our mission is to make life better, I think most people will say, that seems to be making a whole lot of lives better. Like young people are taking the classroom, getting this real experience, and then they're parlaying it into great success in their career. Like it's at the core of what we do, not just because we talk about it, but it's that we walk the talk. And that's why the certified B Corp was really important, because I can get on a podcast and talk about this cool mission statement we have, and even this cool experiential learning platform we have. Great, but what if we peek behind the curtain? How diverse is your company? How do you guys make decisions? How do you pay people? What are those outcomes? How do you treat your vendors? How are all those things done? Nick Bayer can talk about it, maybe even be slightly convincing about it. But what happens when you audit it? What happens when all those things are looked at? And that's the difference, in my opinion, between like greenwashing or purpose washing and companies that are walking the talk. And look, we are not perfect. There's no such thing as a perfect business, but I'm very proud of the fact that every 2 years, B Lab, the parent company of B Corp, audits every single thing that Saxbys does as a business, with the exception of our finances. Our auditors and my investors look deeply at our finances, but every other thing that we do in our business is audited and then benchmark the best of the best. And that's how we got and retain our B Corp certification. And so I hope that this movement, it's less than 2,000 companies in the US who have been able to attain B Corp certification. I hope it goes from being something that some companies do to being the expectation that all companies should do. It is not just be impactful, but be audited. Not so that we can figure out like who's winning and losing, but like a big part of this for us is like we have so many areas to improve from an impact perspective. So every time we're getting audited, we can see where we're weak and see where we need to get stronger. For example, like environmental has never been a huge focus of our business. Like we've been so focused on the social and the governance side of our business that our environmental alone would not have gotten us B Corp certification. But now that's a huge area of focus. We're about to open our first ever zero waste Saxbys in the company history because of the things that we've learned in the B Corp process. So again, this is not about being necessarily better than other people or being perfect, but it's about looking at your business in more ways than just financial success, because I believe Saxbys will be more financially successful because of our genuine impact than we would be if we didn't have the impact focus.
No, that's very well said, and I think that we're absolutely seeing more of that. And the B Corp certification is important, and I've been following that. And there are some major companies like Dannon, for example, that's been able to achieve that as well. So I think we're going to see a lot of change in that area. While we're talking about definitions, as we did with purpose, I'd really be curious, because you work with so many young people. Talk about the entrepreneurial mindset. Is that changing? Is that one of those topics where the definition really morphs over time? Does it, where is it now?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, I'm sure we see this the same way. Like I define entrepreneurship as so much broader than someone who just starts a business. Right. Like that's anyone can start a business. You and I can start a business just being on this podcast right now, and you can just walk down and incorporate the business and you've started a business. Like there's nothing impressive about that. What I think the entrepreneurial mindset is having the ability to see how things can be either created or done better, and having the fortitude and resilience to pursue it. Like that's what I see. So whether you're in a massive business like Dannon, or whether you're in a smaller business like Saxbys, or anything in between, it's sort of having those things. And that's why I think that like it's uniquely human, right? Is you have to have vision, you have to have fortitude, you have to have resilience, because there's no business that has gone from business plan to success in a linear, direct manner. None. Like literally none. Like think about Elon Musk and Tesla. Like Tesla today, he's the richest man in the world. Tesla's one of the most successful companies in the world. But that was 12 to 15 years of almost constantly going bankrupt. Right. And so like there was vision, there was fortitude, there was resilience in every single thing that you do. And like to me, that's the entrepreneurial mindset. And it's really hard to teach that alone in the classroom. Right. It has to come through real experience. And like it takes two to tango, right? It takes the learner to want to have that kind of experience, which is consequence rich. Like you heard it, Deborah, when we were in Florida. You heard Melody and Kimberly talk about how hard this is. It is intentionally hard, right? Like we make this hard. So the learner has to want to have that kind of experience. And the teacher, the experience provider, has to be able to understand that this is a learning opportunity, right? So it's not just about hammering down on them and expecting no one to ever make mistakes. So it really takes two to tango. And that's why I think that great employers, need to be partnering with institutions of education to be able to teach holistically. It's not fair to think that high schools, colleges, community colleges alone are going to be able to prepare people for a rapidly evolving world. We have to partner with them respectfully, genuinely, to allow students to do what we teach really well on top of what they're learning really, really well in the classroom. And so I think the entrepreneurial mindset is not just learn it outside of school, or you can learn it only in school. I think it's a combination of those two, and it comes with fortitude, resilience, and learning by making mistakes.
And drive. Just watching you, you can see the drive. I also think what you're describing might be a first evolution in the future of business in many ways, because I think that we're also seeing, in addition to a lot of other changes, and some of them brought on by COVID and the search for greater meaning, and so on and so forth. I also think that we're seeing a sense of collaboration that's now happening, and an understanding that an entrepreneurial mindset, as you say, is about solving problems in anything that you approach. And then if you can get nonprofit and for-profit and academic and business and so on to all start to collaborate in interesting ways, I think that might be just a wonderful way where we go forward. But that's another discussion. I'm going to end this because I think we could talk for about 8 hours with just a simple question. What's next? What's next for both you and for Saxbys?
Yeah, I think, when I look at what's next, I guess I'll talk to that through the term platform, right? So we talked about our experiential learning platform. We like the term platform because what we're doing today, we think, is a platform for further growth. Like what we're doing today are essentially running cafes in the higher education space. I describe Saxbys as it's an education company disguised as a coffee company on a mission to make life better by empowering the next generation of leaders and entrepreneurs through experiential learning, right? So we believe that we're building a platform to allow people to run their own businesses that will benefit whatever career that they go into. So I think that we're going to expand a lot out of the higher education space. I think we're going to even expand out of the coffee space, because these are the skills that all entrepreneurs and leaders need to be able to hone. And so I think over the next several years, we'll continue to really focus on the higher ed space, because higher ed is teaching a lot of entrepreneurship. They're really looking for experiential learning. We're developing a lot of great habit and success to that. But one of the most exciting things that we're doing is that we're developing a lot of talent internally at Saxbys, right? The Melodies of the world, and there's many of Melody's peers who have joined Saxbys post being a student CEO in college, into their professional career at Saxbys corporate. And so that gives us the opportunity, because the best businesses succeed because they have a lot of talent. Oftentimes it's not the most innovative idea, the most innovative product. It's the people that can execute that better than anything else. And so as we continue to develop and retain a lot of talent, I think it gives us the opportunity to grow. So we're going to grow a lot regionally. I think we're going to grow out of the higher education space at some point. And I think we're going to start to run businesses where we can teach entrepreneurs and things that are different than coffee shops. But I think coffee shops are great ways to learn it. They're super bustling. There's every moving part. They're really, really challenging. Like, it's an amazing vehicle to be able to teach business. So we're going to continue to stamp this out for a while. And ultimately, like when it's all said and done, I hope that Saxbys becomes a leader that companies, actively point you to say, look, you can build a highly successful financial business by building people up. You can be, even better financially because you committed intentionally and successfully as an impact business. Like that's what I want on written all about Saxbys, one day, is that we've proven that you can build a really successful business in more ways than just being financially successful.
Well, you are absolutely amazing, and I hope that we continue to talk along this journey, because this is amazing. And as I started to suggest, it is the future of business. So thank you so much, Nick, for just taking the time, and I'm really looking forward to continuing the conversations.
Pleasure was mine. Thanks so much, Deborah.
Thank you. The Internationalist focuses on the continual reinvention of marketing by highlighting inspirational marketers around the world and their ideas as they move the industry forward. Internationalist Marketing TV shares these perspectives through interviews and personal stories. Thanks so much for watching. If you find this kind of content helpful, please click like or subscribe. Again, thanks so much.